What's up, friends? We are starting a new series here today with the most overpowered champions you probably have, whether they're in your vault or, I hope this isn't the case, you fed them at some point. We're going to be starting off with epics here, and there's going to be more videos to make sure this one isn't that long. So let's dive straight into it. What up, team? It's your boy MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and like we just went over, we're starting a new series. I think this is important. I think there are many champions that are slept on, that I've made videos on in the past, that have just gotten lost over time. So I wanted to make another video condensing all of these champions in one outside of their individual videos. So let's get into it, starting off with our first champion, not Lydia the Death Siren, because she's good, Gala Longbraids. So if you have her and you've been using her, you might know how strong she is, but you might not know how strong she is. So what I want to say about this champion is the shield is the key to Gala Longbraids kit, okay? And I don't know if people kind of overlook this or if they don't think about the potential damage scaling of this, but this hits incredibly hard, and it gives her such a strong defensive layer for building offensive stats. Now, going back for a second, looking at her base stats here, 18,100 base stats for an attack-based champion. There are a lot of dwarves that have insane base stats. She is one of them. Where does she lose out on this? The crit damage is down 3% here. So we have her in Savage gear, we have her in a 2-piece Immortal set for even more survivability, and to also kind of take full advantage of the A3 here. Grants an extra turn if this champion has full HP after using this skill, so the small amount of healing can make a difference if you are in fact able to get that shield on early from the A2 that hits like an absolute truck. Because if you are attacking while under a shield buff, you ignore 50% of the target's health. So arena powerhouse, progression powerhouse. This A1 here also is very beneficial because it places a shield on the champion for 2 turns, and the value is equal to 20% of the damage inflicted, and it ignores 30% of the target's defense. So a lot of defense ignore, kind of rare for an epic here. Good survivability with the shield and the aura. If you need this, this isn't a bad aura since it's all, as opposed to just attacking very, I don't know, niche spots like in arena battles or in faction wars. I really hate those auras, but I guess I kind of see why they use them here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the champions, then I'm going to put them into a run to showcase them specifically so you can see where they shine together here. As far as masteries go, we took Helm Smasher, we took some of the shields masteries, as well as extending the duration of buffs with the chance. Very strong with their shields since she has strong interactions with shields here. The next champion is going to be Faceless, kind of the poster child of the Night Revenant faction wars. If you've done it, you've probably used this guy. One other thing that I have to mention here is these champions are very good because of their longevity in the game. What do I mean by that? You will see countless videos of this champion is OP, use them right now. The issue is once you get to a certain part of the game, they fall off a cliff so hard where they're just unusable. They're going to be in your vault forever. These champions that I'm talking about, however, can last you throughout the entirety of the game. Their kits scale well, their stats scale well, and they are really only outshined by the best of the best champions in this game, which sends their value through the roof, and it's rarely used in any type of grading system. Even though I'm not a fan of tier lists, they do exist. I can't help it. If I could stop them all, I would, but I can't. But if you had to base champions on an individual basis, these champions get left behind because the champions that are better than them are probably the best in the game. But the fact that these champions can survive through the entirety of the game is kind of crazy. So his A1 extra hit doesn't really matter. The A2 increased crit rate buff also doesn't really matter. The key here is the A3. Ignores shield, block damage, and 100% defense, making this an insanely hard-hitting ability. We're talking about a one-shot, single-target nuker for if you're walled in progression, you can't kill something in the Doom Tower, you bring this guy. He's void, he will survive if you have a good enough support system around him, and he will take out any annoying champion that you just cannot get through, whether the shield on them's too big block damage. There are those stupid waves in the Dragon stages and the Fire Knight stages. I'm pretty sure it's Crimson Helm, where they apply that block damage buff after they taunt that can ruin your runs. So if you're just trying to get those runs for the first time, you use this guy, he will one-shot them, and the gear requirement for this guy is so low because he ignores 100%. And I've already said it, but I have to emphasize, the 100% defense ignore is crazy. He might, actually, there are probably other 100% ignores, but for a Void Epic, very, very strong. So we have full Cruel gear, simply because Cruel gear is kind of outweighed as a general account basis. Then just the straight attack set. You can use an attack set here because ignore only really affects his A1 and A2 when the emphasis is really on the A3 for sure here. So we have this gear on him for as much attack as possible. Masteries, crit damage, we don't care about Helm Smasher, which you would normally take. And then we went down the defensive tree to give him some defensive layer, but like I said, it's really going to depend on the champions you surround him with. Now the next champion is a champion I made a video on and people were stunned. This champion was reworked, Hexia here, and I called the video Rotos 2.0, and people were like, Murder, you're crazy, there's no way. But then they watched the video and they said, oh my god, this is a Red Affinity Rotos. Why is that? Let me explain why. This ability here, Soul Reap, grants an extra turn and places a 50% increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns if the attack kills an enemy. Damage increases by 7.5% for each debuff on this champion, stacks up to 30%. Now, the latter part of this is kind of cool, but you really don't want to be going into this with debuffs on this champion unless you're doing some type of hyper synergy with a Gerptuck. Gerptuck's someone who places poisons on your team, so you can get a solid 15% damage buff on top of Gerptuck's passive, of course, on Soul Reap. But you can kind of, this is like a failsafe, if you can call it that. It's just added here just in case, a conditional set of increasing damage. The damage does add up to be a lot for sure, but it's not needed because Soul Reap hits extremely hard. Now, this ability, Spirit Harvest, hits like a truck. I can't explain that. So you go A1, extra turn after you kill the target, then to an A3, similar to Rotos the Lost Group, who's A3, then it's A2. Attacks one enemy but heals this champion by 15% of the damage inflicted, so it's a rather large heal. The heal increases by 10% for each debuff on this champion, places 30% increased speed on this champion for 2 turns, so increased speed's nice. Once again, we get the debuff synergy, which is good when paired with the Gerptuck, but it doesn't really matter because this thing slaps. Next, we have the A1, 40% of a defense down, increases by 20% for each debuff on this champion. Once again, synergy that's kind of questionable unless you're running it with Gerptuck. Gerptuck was a relatively new fusion at the time where Hexia was reworked and became popular based on the video I put out, but it's definitely like just an extra thing. It seems like the whole kit's revolved around it, but they made her strong enough, which they rarely do, by the way. They rarely have a condition that's on A1, A2, and A3 that's kind of like icing on the cake, if we can say that. So she's really strong. Moving on to the Masters, we have Helm Smasher, then the support tree as well here. What do? We have Savage gear, we have Cruel gear, so 4 set and a 2 set. Pretty decent stats. Base attack rather high, 1564 here, 60% crit damage, so we miss out that 3% of course. Health is low, defense is low, so there is that kind of a struggle, and synergy will be needed to keep this champion alive. So we showed you 3 damage dealers. Now let's move to the 4th and final champion for this video here, which is going to be Zelotah. Why this champion is so overlooked and underplayed with, I really don't know. 20,640 base health, 1100 base defense, kind of low base speed, but who cares. I'm currently using a piece of refresh, 4 set of the reflex gear, and then 2 pieces of immortal gear. What's so good about this champion? The A2, Armored Scales, places a shield buff on all allies equal to 20% of this champion's max HP for 3 turns. Not for 2 turns like most things are, it's a 4-turn cooldown here. It's important because it's this champion's max HP. There's tons of champions that place shields depending on your allies' HP, which I think is terrible game design, but it is what it is. On top of that, also places a 15% continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. So this is kind of the highlight of the kit. Really, really strong. You can use this, like I said, forever. Good survivability. Next we have this here, Horror Dreams, 5-turn cooldown. Is that a long cooldown? Absolutely. Has a 50% chance of placing a sleep debuff for 1 turn. 75% chance against enemy under debuffs. Now they're usually going to have debuffs, which brings us up to a 75% chance baseline once booked and a 100% chance again once booked here. So what debuffs should the enemies have? Defense down and weaken. Where can this save you? If you speed tune Zelotah properly in all content, he will use this last. He will put them to sleep, the enemy will lose their turn, and you will get a free second turn for your damage dealing champions, or to even further CC the champions after they take a turn again, giving you 3 turns, which is crazy to think about. Just think about it for a second. 3 turns of pure damage to kind of get rid of whatever threat you're facing here. So really strong here. Of course, the A1, 15% chance up to a 25, 35, 40% chance of placing a sleep on a 1 turn. 40% chance on an A1 is rather strong for sure. So the Aura's resistance in arena, we don't care about that too much here. Now for the masteries, you can go down 2 different paths here. I picked this one. It's kind of wonky, but we have increased value to the heals and increased value to the shields here. I went with extra damage for War Master, but you can also go down the defense tree and completely forego this champion doing any type of relevant damage to the boss and just let him carry the sustain and the CC of your team here. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go into a run. Let me just take a quick look at the affinities. Okay, so red and green. So ideally we want to find a green wave so nobody is weak to this, so we can get a pretty decent understanding of how much damage these guys can in fact do. So we have stage 24 of the dragon, which is green, which is good here. So let's just go on. I guess we'll use the Gala Longbraid aura. I think hers is the best. Yeah, hers is definitely the best. Resistance, then we'll have Lydia here to debuff the squad. So let's head in here and see what kind of damage numbers we are looking at. These, of course, I mean, my gear is very strong, I understand that, but this is kind of what I'm talking about as far as scaling throughout the game here. Very important. So what do we want to do here? We don't have the synergy, and this is one thing you can do with Zelotah, right? We've talked about the waves before on this channel, where the waves you fight of the enemies in every single dungeon, they're base speed, so to double them is not hard at all. So if I wanted to take the mastery that deals increased damage to champions that are under debuffs like sleep, I could do insane damage. So unfortunately it landed on 3 of them. I don't have debuffs early, so I should have had Lydia the fastest and then Zelotah go, but it was kind of just to explain a point here. So here we go, the defense down and weaken here. Now we use Gala Longbraids. We're going to start off with this A3 here. The triple hit, now we get the extra turn. Now let's see this shield in action. Okay, so it's kind of, can I swivel this? Okay, so she's got a pretty large shield, just straight out the gate here. And next we have Hexia for the kind of, oh, I totally messed this up when I should have done red affinity, I think. Yeah, I should have gone into the red affinity dungeon, so let me just back out really quickly. My brain's, I guess, just not working today. So now that we saw that green counters red, we will start in a red dungeon, which is the final stage of this. And I probably should have sorted out the speeds, but we're going to start with the shield this time, whatever. Defense down and weaken, of course. Now Gala, once again, we'll start with the, I mean, we could start with the A1, but I do want to show the A3 and A2 combo one more time, so we'll do it on this champion. We got that A3 going on. Now we'll slam this champion. I mean, come on. So we have to look at the shield here. This is the current shield on. Now let's use this A2. That shield goes away and the shield gets even bigger. Look at that survivability. If she gets targeted by anybody being the leader, generating tons of threat, she's probably fine. So now what we're going to do here is use the A2 combo here. Can we one-shot one of these champions? I'm not quite sure. Let's have a look. Okay, cannot one-shot just yet here. Now we're going to use the A3, I believe. For some reason it's bugged in the test server and the skill tooltips aren't showing up. It is what it is. So I believe this is the hard-hitting ignore. Yeah, that is. Okay. Now we can put them to sleep. Not that we need to, but just as a fail-safe, we will wake up. This guy's going to die anyway, so let's just wake him up. And now we have Hexia once again. A solid 73k there. Moving on, let's just go ahead and shield our team again. pop the A1, bam. So all of this, one thing I should have added to this team that would have made sense now that I'm thinking about it, is increased attack. It's just the logical kind of buff to bring when bringing a team like this, because the numbers may appear to be slightly underwhelming, 93k, but doing this kind of damage without attack up, if you've ever used any type of damage dealer on your team before, it's a lot. So let's do this, get the extra turn going. Gala once again very strong. Now the A1, another big shield. The only issue that Gala can have is when she has a shield on her, and then we kind of just saw it there, she's going to replace the shield that Zelotah provides the team with her own weaker one on the A1, and some people just may not enjoy that. So there we saw the reflex proc. Let's go ahead and use Hexia's A2, 137k. Scaling, we are scaling for sure. Use this A2, 218,000 damage. Okay. So once again, we're going to shield ourselves. And I mean, you guys can, I don't have to explain it that much, right? The overall utility, despite these champions being overgeared, you can take any of these, add it into a team you're currently running. And like I said, they're just going to last you through the entirety of the game. Where Hexia shines even more so than dungeons is the arena, because players can rarely build their champions as tanky as these dungeon waves here. The only time that wouldn't be true is when you start moving on to the, I want to say, gold 5 platinum arena. Once you get there, that's when these things can prove to be an issue here. But once again, the sleep, look how strong it is. All of these champions would have gotten a turn, and now they don't. Simply because we have Zelotah on the team here. I don't want to let Mystic Hand go because he's the cleanser, so we don't want to use their defense down and weaken just yet. Increase crit rate, whatever. Soul Reap, extra turn, no defense down, no weaken, 48k. To be expected, nothing crazy. Extra turn, let's pop another shield on. Like I said, the bad part, oh, it looks like that was fixed. So in the past, Gala Longbraids had this general like look down upon mentality from players because he was replacing weak shields with stronger shields. Actually, now that I think about it, I do remember this being fixed here. It's if the duration is larger. So we just replaced the large shield with a smaller shield, but this shield has a 3-turn duration, which is why it was successfully kind of overridden here, as opposed to the last one. So let's go ahead and use an A1. 70k A1, hard to complain with that compared to a 40k one. Use that. Let's see what the A1's looking like. Gala, 56k. I mean, these champions are just pumping, despite, like I said, me having good gear, but we're not using attack up. And with champions that have base attack like the champions I'm using here today, I mean, attack up makes a huge difference. So what I could do is come back in here and just do one quick, yeah, let's do that. I'm just going to make one quick swap. We're probably going to swap out Zelotah for an increased attack champion, since I made it pretty clear by the showcase how you should be looking to get the most out of Zelotah. So now we have attack up, and we're going to use defense down and weaken on everybody. So now we can do the triple hit again. That's 150k ish, 162k. We are just pumping right now. This one, 152k. Moving on to this guy, 202,000. So you can see the clear difference by running attack up and not running attack up because of these guys' base stats, right? So let's just throw this on auto, just as I'm finishing up my thoughts on these champions here. This is what I mean. And I mean, do you guys see that? 200k from Hexia here. So like, yes, I get it. I'm using very strong gear on these champions, but the only reason why I'm kind of emphasizing how hard these champions are hitting is because if you compare this to the scale of other champions I've tested, these are epics outperforming many legendaries in the same gear. How do I know that? You can look at the multipliers for one, but also it's the base attack, it's how they scale with gear. Things like that, it's hard to know unless you have lots of game knowledge. So having lots of game knowledge, you can take a look at these champions and say, will these champions in fact be viable down the line? For these champions specifically, the answer is yes. They scale incredibly well as your gear gets better, even more so than many legendaries because of their base stats, skill multipliers, synergy with champions, a lot like Gala Longbraid with shields. Huge synergy there. Massive, massive, massive. And I'm only showing you guys this in Dragon here because unfortunately there's not much competition on the test server. With Arena, it's only other content creators, and I don't know, it is what it is there. So had I been testing this on the live servers and I kind of rebuilt these champions for that, went to the arena, I mean, if you guys have these champions, try it out. Trust me and try it out. They're gonna pump crazy damage. If you get a turn with Gala Longbraids in the arena, you get that A3 to A2 off with the big shield, your enemy team is going to struggle heavily, and I mean heavily, trying to kill her. I mean, just look at the shield, right? We got the extra turn. That's a massive shield this champion has, and we're only doing dragon content. If you think she's hitting hard now, you should see how hard she hits when she's hitting other players for crazy stupid amounts of damage. Alright guys, so that's going to be the first video on overpowered champions you probably have. Now, I have more. I'm going to be releasing another episode, not episode, but I guess like a part 2 of this. There are rares I want to talk about. Murder, are we tripping? Did you really just say that? Yes, I'm going to be using rares in the next video of this. There's also, wait for it, an uncommon champion that I want to talk about. Is it going to be Armiger? No, it's not going to be Armiger. Is the rare going to be Coldheart? That's way too obvious. Overpowered champions you probably have and didn't know. Doesn't fit the title. So, I'm going back to the roots here, talking about champions that have pretty much been lost over time for the most part. And I think that's going to be important for a lot of players who might not have been playing 1-2 years ago. Maybe they're newer, maybe they're starting to advance their accounts. They don't see much about these champions that we're talking about here today, and they can use them for extreme progression going forward here. So that's what I want to talk about. Give me your thoughts and feedback. Who here has been using any of these champions so far? I'm hoping in the comment section there are going to be people saying, Murder, you're totally right. I've been using this champion since the start and they've been carrying me through this game. I've seen it in the past and I know I will see in the future. These are what I would consider timeless, epic champions that we're showcasing here today. The same is going to apply with the next episode where I talk about more champions but lower quality for sure. I'll probably throw in a couple epics as well. So as always guys, if you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.